"You can't land that here," the tower yelled, watching a damaged jet fall fast toward the runway. Guards raised their guns, ready to arrest a scared, unknown pilot. But the canopy opened, and everyone froze, until they saw her 5-star general's patch shining through the blood and smoke. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The night was quiet at Cascade Regional Airfield in Washington State. The airfield was mostly used by big aerospace companies for testing new planes. It was not built for warplanes. It was not built for danger. Tonight, that was about to change. David Higgins sat in the control tower with a cup of coffee in his hand. He had worked as an air traffic controller for 20 years. He had seen storms, engine failures, and emergency landings. But he had never seen anything like what was about to happen. A red light flashed on his radar screen. An unknown aircraft had entered restricted airspace. It was flying too fast and too low. David put down his coffee and leaned toward his microphone. "Unidentified aircraft, this is Cascade Tower," he said. "You are in restricted airspace. State your identification and your intentions." There was no answer, only static. Then, through the static, David heard something strange. It sounded like heavy breathing, like someone in pain. He tried again. "Unidentified aircraft, you must divert immediately. Change your heading to McCord Air Force Base. Acknowledge." A weak voice came through the radio. "Cascade Tower, this is Spectre Actual. I am declaring an emergency. My aircraft is badly damaged. I am coming in for a landing on your runway." David's hands went cold. "You can't land that here," he shouted into the microphone. "This is a civilian airfield. We have a private event happening on the runway right now. You need to divert." "I do not have enough fuel or control to divert," the voice replied calmly. "I am landing on runway 24. Clear the runway now." High above the clouds, the pilot of the damaged aircraft fought to keep it steady. Her name was Catherine Caldwell. She was flying a secret test aircraft that had been attacked over the Pacific Ocean less than an hour ago. A missile had hit her jet and torn a hole in the side of the cockpit. A piece of metal had cut into her shoulder. Blood soaked through her flight suit. Warning lights flashed all around her. One engine was destroyed. The other was barely working. She knew she could not fly much longer. She also knew she could not land at a military base. Someone inside the military had leaked her flight path to the people who attacked her. If she landed at a base, she might not survive the night. She needed a place that was watched by many people, cameras, and civilians. A place where nobody could quietly make her disappear. Cascade Regional was that place. In the tower, David turned to the ground team. "Clear the runway now. Move every truck, every person. We have an emergency landing coming in fast." Down on the ground, corporate guests were enjoying a party near a new commercial airplane. Security guards ran through the crowd, pushing people back and shouting for them to move. Fire trucks raced toward the runway with their lights flashing. Colonel Ronald Hastings, the military officer in charge of security at the airfield, came running out when he heard the noise. He was a proud man who liked order and control. He did not like surprises, and this was the biggest surprise of his career. "What is happening?" he shouted at a guard. "Sir, there's a military aircraft coming in for an emergency landing. The pilot is not listening to orders." Hastings clenched his jaw. "Get my security team ready. If this pilot thinks they can break the rules on my base, they will answer for it." High above, Catherine pulled the control stick with all her strength. The runway came into view through the cracked glass of her cockpit. She lowered the landing gear. 2 of the 3 wheels worked. The third was jammed halfway down. "Brace for impact," she said into her radio, her voice steady despite the pain. The jet hit the runway hard. One tire burst immediately. The jammed wheel collapsed, and the aircraft tilted to one side. Sparks flew into the air as metal scraped against the concrete. The jet skidded across the runway, spun in a wide circle, and finally slid off the edge into the grass, coming to a stop in a cloud of smoke and dust. For a moment, everything was silent except for the hiss of the aircraft's fire safety system releasing foam over the smoking engines. Fire trucks surrounded the wreck within seconds, spraying it with foam to stop any fire. Security vehicles arrived right behind them. Men in tactical gear jumped out, raising their rifles toward the cockpit. Colonel Hastings walked forward with a megaphone in his hand. "Pilot of the aircraft," he shouted. "You have broken restricted airspace rules. Open your canopy and keep your hands visible. Step out slowly, or you will be fired upon." Inside the cockpit, Catherine took a slow breath. Her left arm was almost useless from the injury, but she used her right hand to pull the emergency release lever. The canopy lifted off with a loud crack and was thrown aside by the aircraft's safety system. She unbuckled her harness, removed her helmet, and placed it carefully on the edge of the cockpit. Then, using only her right arm, she pulled herself up and climbed down the small ladder built into the side of the jet. Her boots landed softly on the wet grass. She looked terrible. Her flight suit was torn and burned in places. Her arm hung limply at her side, dark with blood. But she stood straight, and her eyes showed no fear, even with a dozen rifles pointed at her. Hastings marched toward her, his face red with anger. "Do you understand what you have done?" he shouted. "You crashed a military aircraft on private property. You endangered dozens of people at a corporate event. You ignored direct orders from air traffic control. You are under arrest." Catherine looked at him without any emotion. "Colonel," she said, "tell your men to lower their weapons." Hastings laughed bitterly. "You are in no position to give orders. You have no name, no rank that I can see, and no right to tell me what to do. Cuff her." Two guards stepped forward with plastic restraints in their hands. "I would not recommend that," Catherine said quietly. Her voice had changed. It was calm, but there was something in it that made the guards hesitate. "Is that a threat?" Hastings snapped. Without another word, Catherine raised her good hand to her chest. There, hidden under dirt and foam from the crash, was a patch. She wiped it clean with 2 strokes of her thumb. The bright lights from the fire trucks lit up the patch clearly. It was not the mark of a lieutenant or a captain. It was not even the single star of a general. It was a circle of 5 silver stars. Up in the tower, David was watching the whole scene through his binoculars. He leaned forward, adjusting the focus, not sure he was seeing it right. When the light caught the patch fully, his stomach dropped. He had spent 20 years guiding pilots of every rank, and he had never once seen 5 stars on a shoulder. He lowered the binoculars slowly, his mouth going dry. Hastings stared at the patch. His mouth opened, but no words came out. A 5-star general. A rank that had not been used since World War II. He had heard rumors that it had been brought back months ago for a special new military command, but he never imagined he would meet the person who held it, especially not like this. One of the older security guards lowered his rifle slowly. "That's General Caldwell," he whispered. "I saw her in a briefing years ago." Hastings felt the color drain from his face. He had just threatened to arrest the highest-ranking officer in the entire military. "General," he said, his voice shaking, I did not know. We received no notice of your arrival." "You received no notice," Catherine said, "because the people who tried to kill me an hour ago control parts of our communication systems. That is exactly why I landed here, and not at a military base." Hastings swallowed hard. "Ma'am, this is a civilian airfield. We have no connection to military secrets here." "That is what you are supposed to believe," Catherine replied. She pointed toward a large gray building at the far end of the airfield. "Somebody in Hangar 4 has been using this civilian airfield to hide a secret operation. They tracked my aircraft using a ground signal, which should not have been possible unless they had inside access to military flight data. They tried to shoot me down over the ocean. Now that they know they failed, they will be trying to destroy evidence right now." Hastings turned pale and looked toward the hangar. "That building is leased to a private company. They say they do weather research." "They do treason," Catherine said firmly. "And because I crashed my aircraft on your runway, they now know their attack failed. Every second we wait, they are destroying proof." Up in the tower, David had watched the entire scene with his binoculars. He saw the guards lower their weapons. He saw Hastings turn from an angry man into a nervous one. He picked up his radio. "Ground team, this is Tower. Colonel Hastings, what is your status?" Hastings answered, his voice tight. "Tower, we have identified the pilot as a 5-star general. Lock down all air traffic on the field immediately. Nobody leaves." Catherine stepped closer to Hastings' radio and spoke into it herself. "Mr. Higgins, this is General Caldwell. Ground every aircraft on this field. If anyone tries to take off, block the runway with a fire truck." "Yes, ma'am," David replied immediately. "Locking it down now." Catherine turned back to Hastings. "Colonel, you have a security team. Gather them. We are going to Hangar 4 before they destroy what is inside." Hastings nodded, forcing himself to focus. He handed her his sidearm without being asked. Catherine checked it and placed it on her hip. "Move your team into position," she said. "If anyone inside resists, you have my authority to respond with force." The security team moved quickly toward Hangar 4 in tight formation. As they got closer, gunfire suddenly erupted from inside the building. Men in unmarked tactical gear opened fire from the shadows, clearly trained and heavily armed, nothing like normal private security. Hastings and his men returned fire and took cover. Catherine, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, moved along the side of the building and found a smaller door. She broke the lock and stepped inside. Smoke filled the air. She saw men placing burning devices on top of tall server racks, destroying data as fast as they could. Catherine raised her weapon. "Stop and step away from those machines," she ordered. The armed men turned in surprise, expecting a full team, not one wounded woman. That moment of hesitation gave Catherine the advantage. She fired quickly and accurately, disabling 3 of them before the others took cover and fired back. Just as things grew dangerous, Hastings and his team broke through the main doors, catching the remaining attackers in a crossfire. Within minutes, the fight was over. The intruders were either down or surrendering. Catherine rushed toward one server that was not yet destroyed. She pulled a heavy backup drive free just before the machine caught fire completely. It held proof of everything: the attack, the money, and the people behind it. Security dragged a man in a torn suit toward her. It was Arthur Pendleton, an executive from the company renting the hangar. "You have no idea what you're doing," Pendleton said, trying to sound confident, but his voice shook. "This is a huge misunderstanding." Catherine held up the drive. "This proves you fed my flight path to the people who attacked me. You tried to kill a United States general to protect your secrets." Pendleton's face went pale. "You don't understand how far this goes," he whispered. "There are powerful people involved. If you take that evidence forward, they will make sure you never make it to a courtroom." "They are welcome to try," Catherine said calmly. She turned to Hastings. "Arrest him. Secure this hangar. Nobody touches these machines until my team arrives." Hastings saluted sharply, his earlier anger completely replaced by respect. "Yes, General." As the adrenaline faded, the pain in Catherine's shoulder became too much to ignore. Her vision blurred, and her knees gave out. Medical teams rushed in as she sank to the ground, still holding tightly to the drive. "Copy that, Tower," she whispered into her radio before losing consciousness. "Spectre Actual is signing off." Catherine woke up 2 days later in a small medical room deep inside a secure military building. Her arm was wrapped tightly, and a machine beside her bed beeped steadily. A young officer named Captain Samuel Brooks stood near her, looking tired but relieved. "You lost a lot of blood, General," he said. "The doctors said you were lucky to keep your arm." "The drive," Catherine said at once. "Where is it?" "Secured," Samuel replied. "But there's a problem. The moment we brought it in, senior officials tried to take control of the investigation. They are already calling it a small, isolated incident. They want it closed quietly." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "Somebody wants this buried." "That is what worries me," Samuel said. "Whoever helped Pendleton attack you might still be protected." A tall man in an expensive suit soon entered the room. He introduced himself as a senior defense official and spoke with practiced kindness, telling Catherine that the matter was already being handled and that she should focus on resting. He suggested the whole case be treated as one company's mistake, nothing more. Catherine listened carefully, watching his eyes rather than his words. She had seen this kind of comfort before, the kind used to make problems disappear quietly. She said little in return, but she had already made sure that copies of the real evidence had been sent to people who could not be silenced, investigators and officials outside the chain that had tried to protect Pendleton. Within days, arrests began. Officials connected to the leak were removed from their positions. Pendleton, seeing that his powerful protectors could no longer help him, cooperated fully with investigators to reduce his own punishment. The conspiracy that had reached into military communication systems was finally exposed and dismantled, piece by piece. Weeks later, Cascade Regional Airfield looked very different. The runway had been repaired. The corporate banners were gone. In their place stood a new, official military research base, secured and respected. General Catherine Caldwell stood on the tower's observation deck, her arm now free from its brace, though still supported by a sling. Beside her stood Colonel Hastings, wearing a new medal on his chest. "I still can't believe you chose this airfield to crash on," Hastings said. "It was the only place they couldn't quietly make me disappear," Catherine replied. "Sometimes the safest place is the one nobody expects." Below them, 2 new aircraft taxied onto the runway, engines roaring with power. David's voice came over the tower speakers, clear and proud. "Cascade Tower to Wraith 1 and Wraith 2, you are cleared for takeoff." The aircraft lifted into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Catherine watched them go, knowing that the danger she had uncovered was only the beginning of a much bigger fight, one she was ready to face.